Oh, yeah. Tour's not here.
I'd like to call the June meeting of the Board of the Legislature to session, and we will begin by standing for the pledge and a prayer. And roll call of members, please.
Legislator Maxon? Adsit? Johnson? Jarrow?
Here.
Reed?
Here.
Ferris?
Here.
McBride?
Here.
Drake?
Here.
Monticelli?
Here.
Goldo?
Here.
Peck?
Here.
Yamawanik?
Here.
Gray?
Here.
13 present.
Okay. First on the agenda, we will have a presentation from Apex Clean Energy regarding their proposal for their Glue Island project. And Neil will speak to us on that. Introduce everybody.
Thank you, Chairman Gray, and thank the board for giving me an opportunity to present our proposed project. My name is Neil Habig. I'm the developer on the Glue Winds project. I'm here tonight with Dan Fitzgerald, who is the development director of the Northeast for Apex. Let's see if this works here. Okay. This is just a brief outline of what I was going to cover, an overview of the project, some of the differences between the current development and the development that was reviewed before this board 4 or 5 years ago, where we are in the project schedule, touch on some of the local benefits that the project could provide, touch on a few of the community concerns that we've seen in the media and/or in talking to people, and then open it up to any questions that the board might have. As far as the project overview, we're proposing 32 turbines, as tall as 600 feet at the blade tip. It's not clear exactly how tall the towers would be. That's substantially higher than the previous turbines, but that would be sort of a maximum height of blade tip. That configuration of 32 turbines would potentially create energy to supply 35,000 homes, and it would be connected to the mainland via a 30-mile underwater cable down to Oswego. This map here shows basically the roadways between the turbines, and as well as the collection lines that aggregate the electricity at a substation on the land. We go and cable down to Oswego. So one of the significant differences in this project compared to the previous project was 84 turbines, where we're looking at 32, which is a pretty substantial reduction, and there's a corresponding reduction in miles of roads and collection and so forth. And if you look at the infrastructure we're planning on the island, it's quite a bit less substantial. Another significant difference is the interconnection strategy. As I mentioned, we're planning on going underwater. Previously, they were going from the island to the mainland, but then they had a 40-plus mile route over land, overhead construction. And again, we're planning to go from the island to Oswego underwater, and the existing grid infrastructure is about 1,000 feet from the lake shore down in Oswego, and it's at a location where there's an existing generating plant, so it's in the same context of the existing infrastructure in the area, and eliminates overhead construction. As far as project schedule, subject to a number of things coming together, we would target the project to become commercially operational at the end of 2018. In order for that to happen, we would have to begin the construction in late 2017 into 2018. One of the activities that we need to complete, separate from the permitting, is an interconnection agreement with New York ISO and National Grid, and that's tracking to be completed in 2017. We're right now in the Article 10 process, which I think members of the board may be familiar with. The first step was a public involvement plan that outlines the outreach that we're going to undertake in the community. Then the next phase is a preliminary scoping statement, and we just filed that yesterday. Once that's filed, that initiates a 21-day comment period where members of the public, parties, can provide comments on the scope of study that will input into the application. The Article 10 process will likely continue for another 12-plus months through the application and application review process. Some of the local benefits to the project would be short-term construction jobs, somewhere between 150, as well as associated goods and services. Construction workers would likely be staying on the mainland in the communities, adding revenue to restaurants, lodging facilities, and so forth. Long-term, 3 to 5 good-paying technical jobs, wind turbine technicians, operations personnel, and then property taxes or pilot significant revenue from that, likely in excess of $20 million over the project life to provide funding to schools, specifically schools, depending upon an eventual share of revenue. It could be more than $600,000 a year to the local school district, which in this case is the Sackett Harbor School District. We've read and heard and had some discussions with folks about the pilot. We know that there was a pilot that was approved for the previous project, and it had some support and some opposition, so it was a close vote in the end. I know that Chairman Gray has mentioned the aspect of the pilot that allows you to adjust the revenue share between the tax jurisdictions, and independent of any sort of tax advantage, that may be something that the county is supportive of pursuing. Another factor with the pilot is it provides a stable revenue over time. You know what it is. Taxes tend not to go down in value, but it allows you to forecast over time because it's a set amount over time. And it also, more for the town, which is involved in the assessment, but it avoids assessment challenges year after year. It's agreed for the term of the pilot over the time. As I mentioned, in the past there was some mixed support for a pilot for the Lou project, and we understand that there's a similar sentiment now. The perception that there's little benefit, it would be more than $20 million over 20 years. That's substantial. And another important consideration is that there's little or no offsetting service burden, unlike housing developments that might have attendance loads on the school system and things like that, roads. And the Lou is a particularly unique situation where it doesn't get any services. It doesn't have any utility infrastructure. It doesn't have any roads. It's kind of off to itself. So the project wouldn't increase any cost requirements in the county. And then there are some concerns that folks that we've talked to have expressed. More recently, question of Fort Drum has come up, and I understand that the Development Authority of North Country is doing a land use study. So we've talked to Drum, and I'll touch on that in a second. And the other issue is aesthetics in relation to that, property values and so forth. As far as Drum is concerned, it's a couple points. We understand the study's going on. They're going to look at it in quite a lot of depth. But this graphic here, we have a line that goes from Galoo Island to the radar at Fort Drum. That's 35 miles from the Sac Wheeler Air Base radar to the nearest turbine on Galoo. As well, the base elevation is about 700 feet above sea level, where at Galoo it's about 250 feet. So the radar would be looking down a little bit. The turbine height offsets that a little bit, but basically it's low on the horizon, and it's 35 miles away. Conversely, Maple Ridge is only about 16 miles away, and it's here. The base is down here at about 700 feet, and the turbines are about 1,800 feet. So that's higher in the sky, if you will. Again, 35 miles from the radar, 120 feet off the horizon. And then lastly, important to note, it's not in active civilian or military flight routes or training areas. Again, we met with the base, and they confirmed that we're not. And we've also met with Watertown Airport, and they've confirmed that we're not in any active airspace. As far as aesthetics, just a point. This is a view simulation, and of course it's a little washed out here. The turbines are here. This particular view simulation is from Westcott Beach. It's about 11.5 miles from Galoo Island. You really can't see, it's kind of washed out, but you can see them slightly. Now, these are subjective. In this instance, you can't really see the turbines. We have a poster at our office where you can see them and so forth. But we've shown it to people at our open houses, and there's been some concern as to how accurate they are or they aren't. So as a suggestion, because I know in the last go-round, some of the legislators went out to look at certain vantage points at Galoo to see how far away it appeared. We looked for a location that was a similar distance, 11.5 miles from Wolf Island, and if you get out on Point Peninsula off of State Park Road, if you go down 3.3 miles, this area right here gives you a vantage point to the Wolf Island. Turbines are about 11 miles away, to give you some sense of what it actually looks like in real life. You can use your own eyes to see that. Now, in fairness, the turbines of Wolf Island are about 425 feet tall, and what we're talking about is substantially taller than that. But the mass of the towers and the nacelle are common, so it's representative. It's not a perfect example, but it's representative. And as well, it's 11.5 miles, and certainly there are some locations on the mainland that are closer to Galoo than 11.5 miles. But this happens to be, we looked around, and a lot of the lake shores either has trees or homes or so forth. So there's really not a great public view that we've found so far in looking that is maybe 7 miles away. If we find one, we'll put it on our website and provide a similar recommendation if people wanted to see that. So, so that's what we had on the agenda. For additional information, we have a website, Galoo Island Wind, and we have a local office that will post hours. We're just getting some local staff in there presently, but we'll post hours on our website. So if people have questions or want to stop by, get some information, and talk about the project, they're welcome. And we've had 3 open houses for the project so far. We're going to have another meeting in Henderson in the middle of July, and we'll be posting that on our website as well as advertising that. So that's all we had as far as formal presentation, and if there are any questions. One other thing, as far as the pilot is concerned, the IDA is the mechanism which to put that forward. We make an application to the IDA, and then they would engage the tax jurisdiction. So we welcome direct interaction with the board or a subcommittee of the board in those discussions. But that's what we'll be doing, and we hope to present to the IDA board at their next meeting in July.
Thank you, Neil. Questions? Mr. Maxim?
What was the, excuse me, what's the total nameplate megawatt for the project? Estimated.
Currently it's 110.4. The turbine configurations change over time. We were looking at turbines that were 3.3 megawatts per turbine, and they've now increased that to 3.45, and so the math with 32 turbines works out to 110 megawatts.
Mr. Peck?
Thank you. I kind of know from researching other wind projects around the state that over time these turbines lose their maximum capacity over time. So if you're starting out at 110, what do you foresee these things might actually be producing towards the end of their useful life?
I haven't. I know that's true in solar. You have an annual degradation that might be 0.5% per year, but a properly maintained wind turbine, I've never come across any suggestion that the output is reduced. Components have to be replaced, bearings have to be lubricated, and so forth. But I've never. I mean, we do it in our financial modeling, so there's no degradation that I'm aware of.
What has made it more economical for this project than the last glue ion project to be able to go underwater?
Well, we've run into that a number of times. That apparently the former developers said it was too expensive to do what we're proposing. It turns out that it's expensive to get a vessel mobilized and configured and load the cable on it. But once you've done that, and they of course had to do that in any event because they had to get from the island to the mainland, be it in Henderson 10 miles away or in Oswego 30 miles away, the cost of the cable itself, cable alone is probably not a whole lot different than overhead construction. And so they were going to have to pay the cost to get the ship mobilized, to load the cable, to land the cable on the island and land the cable on the mainland. And the incremental cost of an extra mile in the middle of the lake is relatively low. I would say it's equal or less than the cost of a mile of overhead construction. And then if you look at their total solution, they had 40 plus miles of overland construction, a total of 51 or 52 miles. So in our analysis, our solution is cheaper. But now they were looking at quite a bit more, many more turbines, 84 turbines. We don't see that could have worked with spacing requirements. But given that they had that many turbines, their size was closer to 250 megawatts, and that has to be interconnected at a higher voltage. So they were looking for a 345 interconnection point, and so they looked down in Mexico where the 345 line is. We're looking at a 115 kV interconnection point, which are a little more available.
We've gone through the process by resolution in other counties along Lake Ontario for marine sanctuary designation. Are you aware of that, and does that have any potential impacts on your project?
Well, I've heard of the designation. I have to say I'm not intimately familiar with it, and so I don't know what impact that would have.
Mr. Reed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of notes or questions. Decommission plan, I didn't see anything for that in the presentation. These don't last forever. I know you said they have a
Sure.
good longevity, but we hear sometimes where they're just abandoned. And so is decommission plan part of your overall presentation?
Sure, and that is in our, that's detailed in the public scoping statement that was, I call it public scoping, preliminary scoping statement. It was published and is on the Public Service Commission website as well as on our website. So there are 25 operational wind farms in New York State right now. Every single one of those has a decommissioning plan. The stories about rusting turbines being abandoned and becoming a burden for either the landowner or the municipalities evolved out of some experience in California where that exact thing happened, and communities learned from that. So in every instance of the 25 operating wind farms in New York, the municipalities have required a decommissioning plan, and the parameters of that vary probably project to project, but basically they require that you have a professional engineer's estimate of what it would cost to decommission the project should the project operator abandon it, and they require bonding or security to be put in place that would cover that. So it's the obligation of the developer to decommission the project on their own, but as events may happen, they become insolvent or troubled or something like that, and they go away. Of course, that can happen. This leaves the jurisdictions with the funding to do it on their own. Not that they're looking to become involved in that, but the funding would be in place, and so that's what we would propose similarly.
And, so, I mean, that's an arbitrary number, I guess. That's nothing we have a say in, that number?
Oh, no, well, typically the way it's been done is that it's required that a professional engineer, has a signed estimate, and that over time, typically it's every other year, or maybe it's after the first 5 years, but it's periodically updated. So the engineer would look at it every 2 years, for example, and would say, given fuel costs, this and that, it would cost this much to decommission this project. And that, that's a decommissioning plan that needs to be approved under Article 10, probably by the state siting board. Yes.
That's unique, so over the course of the construction, not all of those jobs. It's not like you're going to have 100
Right. I mean, there would be some preliminary survey work done, and you might have a dozen people working, and then at the peak of construction, when you're installing foundations and erecting turbines, you could have 150 people, and then as you start moving into commissioning, the count would. I don't have an exact profile.
Out of those 150 jobs, because it's often sold that these jobs are local,
Mm-hmm.
find out some big portion, a significant portion, professional, and then you would install it. How many local, is that your local target, or is that?
That's total jobs, so I think it would be hard to put an exact number on that. I mean, certainly things like the main erection crane operator is a fairly specialized position. On the other hand, people doing rebar work or excavation or driving articulated dump trucks is something that'd be locally sourced. Yeah, that's a fair question. Mhm.
Certainly. Anybody else? Mr. Gerald?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Neil. You're going to propose a pilot of payment in lieu of taxes to the IDA. Are you going to kind of give them a ballpark of what you're looking for to make a viable project out of this? And what would that be? And how would that be valued? Would it be per megawatt, or would it be construction cost, or how would it be structured?
I think, I think all 25 of the projects that are operating today have one form of a pilot agreement or another. Maple Ridge was a little bit different. It was done as an Empire Zone, and Madison predated the legislation, so it was a little bit different. But the balance of them have been either 47 or IDA pilots. My understanding is the first step is to make application to the IDA, and then the IDA in turn engages the tax jurisdictions. And so whether it's incumbent upon the developer to make an initial offer or something. I mean, we know what was agreed to before. We know around the state what these numbers were. I think without exception, seen it quoted in terms of dollars per megawatt per year.
So, I mean, you must have an idea of what that is. You said it's $20 million for the 3 taxing jurisdictions over the life of the project.
Yeah.
And you know how, so that, I mean, we're looking at about $9,000, roughly $9,000 per megawatt per year.
Yeah, I think that's in the ballpark, right? That would, the math works out to that range, and that's been. I think there was one more recently done for a little bit less than that. There was a variation where one was substantially less than that, maybe $3,000 per megawatt per year, but they also had a complementing host community agreement that sort of brought it back up into the $8,000 to $10,000 range.
Maxim?
Thank you. Now, what's the cost of one of the turbines?
The turbine itself or the installed cost?
On a per megawatt basis.
On a per megawatt basis is, I'd say it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 million.
Okay. Just doing a little back of the agenda.
I saw you on the calculator.
Doing a little back of the agenda math, in the 2.3 million per megawatt range at 110, works out to be about a full market value for the project of about $250 million, which at our current tax rates would be about $5 million in annual payments to the 3 jurisdictions. So I'm just sort of looking out loud that $20 million pilot over 20 years is about $1 million a year, which is an abatement of $4 million for 3 to 5 long-term jobs. It's kind of a big number per job.
Further questions? Mr. Peck?
Thank you. Where are the turbines coming from? Are they being constructed here stateside, or are they coming from overseas?
We haven't made a final selection of turbines. There are a number of manufacturers, some of whom have U.S. manufacturing, some have some components coming from the U.S., some assembly. The one turbine we've looked at, Vestas turbine, has some U.S. assembly and manufacturing, but not all components come from the U.S. GE has U.S.-based assembly, but again, I think they have some various turbines have various component sources.
You know, in addition to, a pilot would obviously help you with cash flow and be able to make a project more affordable through its lifetime in the long run, but what are your other funding streams? What other revenues or investments come into a project like this to be able to help get it off the ground?
Well, there's, the electricity, the cash flow coming from the electricity sales. And in the last number of years, New York has had a renewable portfolio standard that's offered state renewable energy credits, so there's some potential revenue there. Right now, that program is in transition, and what it will look like moving forward is unclear. There is currently in place a federal production tax credit. It was extended last year on a phase-out basis for the next 5 years. So those are your incentive or revenue sources.
Is there any private investment into this venture?
Oh, certainly. Sure.
So Apex Clean Energy has been looking at what we call the post-production tax credit world for a while, and that's one of the things that we've specialized in for the last 2 years. So we've been getting private investors to finance the building of the projects and then enjoy some of the revenue stream after the project is constructed. Other things that we've done is we've gone into private marketing. We're really heading towards that market economy of renewable energy. So in the last 2 years, 2 of the projects we built, the entire output, and on paper the project itself, even though we're running it, was sold to IKEA because they see the benefit of having renewable energy as part of their ownership structure. So we have IKEA as a customer, and then just this year we closed on a power purchase agreement with Fort Hood in Texas for a combined solar on-site, wind off-site. So we're really looking at new ways to have the power purchased from these projects to go more directly to private entities or entities with a particular interest in renewable energy. So that's one of our major funding streams there. And as Neil said, with the production tax credit phasing out, we're actually ahead of the game because we've been planning for this, and now other developers are moving towards that, but I feel like we have an advantage in selling the power.
Quick question. You did mention outside investors. So do you have an idea of how much of your revenue stream circulates in the community versus goes outside the community? Is all your revenue stream just shipped out?
No, there will be, whatever local jobs we have, there will be the payments to the municipalities in whatever form that takes. And then there's a certain amount of commitment to the state of New York. But yes, it will go to whomever the investors are in that. And right now, New York has a goal of reaching 50% renewable energy by 2030, which is spurring a lot of movement in the business communities within New York. So our goal will be to approach them. We are constantly in touch with potential in-state purchasers of the power.
Further questions? Mr. Peck?
So just so I get this right through here, you're saying essentially that the state of New York is an investor within this structure then, to some degree?
The state is still developing their policies for their 50% by 2030.
But also a beneficial shareholder?
Not necessarily, no. Businesses in New York State are encouraged to invest, and that's mostly due to the way they want to operate. It's not the state mandating that businesses have to buy power from us. Now, what we may see in the future is utilities being mandated to have a certain percentage of renewable energy. The way that is starting to shape up is that would be a competitive bid process. So if you're a utility, you may be required to have X percent renewable energy, but the way in which you procure that would be through a competitive solicitation to keep the prices down. So we'll see some utilities buying. Otherwise, we just sell at the market price, which, for us, when we build one of these projects, the huge investment is up front. It costs a lot to put one of these in. But after that, then what happens is the revenue stream, we're not beholden to the changes in the cost of our fuel. Our fuel is the wind, so we're able to harness that without worrying about commodity prices going up or down on that. So we're able to keep that cost consistent and also keep prices down in the state. So our payoff comes later. The first 10 years are a little tough.
So with that then, we notice near daily that somebody is pushing renewable energies within portfolio. I think the governor's trumpeted, pushing us to better than 50%, or even obliterating coal, fossil fuel energy production in the state. So with that in mind, you talk about a pilot for 20 years, but in the long run, we're being forced into consideration of renewable energies as a more permanent source of energy. So why should we consider a pilot at all when if this is going to be the new standard of electricity production?
It's a good question. So with a pilot, I mean, there's a couple ways we can look at it. First of all, I would like to review, was it Mr. Maxson was doing the math? Did you say $1 million per megawatt? Or $2 million per megawatt? Right, so just to be clear, it's about 2 to 2.5 million per wind turbine, which each wind turbine would be 3.4 megawatts. I just want to make sure we're using the same numbers in the math there. All right. I thought you had it as, yeah, so it's not 2.25 per megawatt, it's per wind turbine, and each wind turbine is 3.4 megawatts, what we have proposed now. Then in regard to the payment in lieu of taxes, you know, the main reason that we're pursuing that is this is the way that every wind turbine project in New York has been structured up to this point. We anticipated it would be the same. You know, it helps us establish that, I think, for the county. You know, all these projects are always in competition with each other to go forward. So basically, we're being put on a different playing field than our competitor, so our cost would be more, therefore our cost of power would be more, therefore we'd be at a disadvantage. So we're looking for a level playing field across the state so that we can be competitive. And in addition to that, you know, I think an important thing to look at is Glue Island, you know, what is the revenue coming into municipalities now, and what could it be with this project? As Neil stated, we will be putting that facility out there. We will not be using local roads out there. We will not be using all that infrastructure where if we put a plant in downtown Sackett's Harbor. So what we have is we won't be upping the costs to the county, to the town, to the school district, while at the same time we're increasing greatly what the revenue is that's coming off of that island.
Mr. Ferris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A lot of new faces since when I got on the board. We had this discussion with Blue Island last time. And one of the things I remember, by the way, you guys did a very nice presentation, sized it down, pretty easy to understand, and I thank you for that. But last time we were under this big pressure to get it approved, because if they didn't have 80-some turbines and we weren't approved by a certain date, the money wouldn't be there and it wouldn't go through, and they pushed and pushed, remember? And now this is a more kindler, gentler version of the same thing with a third of the turbines and still working out. I see Mike spinning his wheels over there, but Phil remembers it was had the deadlines pushing and pushing and pushing us. And what changed? Is there more money coming from grants to make a smaller project worthwhile? 'Cause last time with 84 turbines or whatever it was, they didn't have the money to bring it through the water. They were pushing us to move forward.
So I can't speak a lot to the last project. I wasn't here for that. Sounds like I'm glad I wasn't here for it. But so, you know, we've taken a fresh look at this project. We think that the island has the potential. You know, as far as the number of turbines, I really don't understand how they planned that, knowing what I know about turbine technology. You know, prices have shifted. Turbine prices have come down. The price to install the cable, that actually is a time-sensitive thing because the cost of certain metals goes up and down depending on what's happening in the world. So they may have been under other pressures. But right now, you know, with our planned schedule and the planned proposal, it pencils out to be a project that can work. I'll be honest with you, you know, as a developer in the Northeast, I compete with projects across the country. In Oklahoma, regulations a little bit less and costs are a lot less. So, you know, it's really tough to try to prove our Northeast projects, but this one still is in a spot where it's one that we want to advance.
The question I think Mr. Peck was trying to ask, and I was trying to ask, how much is federally funded to get this project off the ground, or is it just in tax credits that these other companies are buying into the project for, so they have tax credits?
Right. So right now, again, to clarify on the incentives, right now all of our development, all of our construction will be done with private money. There is no, for a while there was that incentive tax grant. That's gone. So what we have is production tax credit, which as Neil pointed out, It's now in its 5-year finish period where each year it's going down 20%. So we will have some production tax credit, which is where we will get tax credit for what we produce, all right? So nobody's writing us a check up front. We have to produce to get the tax credit, and then it's just a tax credit. And then renewable energy credits, which we can sell in-state or out-of-state. And those right now in-state are managed by the New York State Energy Research and Development Association or agency, one of those A's.
Sufficient. Mr. Monticelli.
Thank you, Chairman Gray. I have two questions, sort of transmission and distribution questions. If you go overland with a line, you have to have easements, you got to pay for all that. How do you buy the right to put it in a cable in the water?
So, Neil, you want to cover this one?
Sure. The lake bed below mean high water in Lake Ontario is land of the state, and so it is a permission to use it is done through the Department of State under a submerged land easement, and there's a fixed fee per foot. It started out years ago at $12 per foot, one-time payment, and it's gone up. It's $21, $22 per foot currently.
It's a one-time payment, and you're responsible for maintenance of it. So you have access to your cable, and you can just do
That's
what
right.
you need to do.
Yes.
And so whatever happens above it, I mean, it's water, so obviously there's nothing permanent there. But whatever is going on above it, you have access. Nobody can block your access to that cable.
Well, it's not a, I don't know what the term is. It's non-exclusive. In other words, the above the cable, you're free to navigate. It would be put on charts so that people would avoid anchoring right over it. Part of the way in soft bottom conditions, it would be buried under the lake bed to protect it from errant anchors, but it's not an exclusive. It's not going to preclude anyone from utilizing.
Then my other question, thank you. My other question is about, so now the power gets to Oswego, and you have to have so you have electricity, and you have to sell it to somebody who's going to distribute it to the people who are going to use it, right? I mean,
Yeah, there needs to be some sort of off-take arrangement, correct.
So who's that with?
Did you want to?
So currently that's yet to be determined. So we always have the option of selling at market rate into the New York State grid, which the New York State Independent System Operator runs the grid, and they also manage the marketplace, which is a competitive process. So basically there's this ongoing auction for electricity in New York, and every generator is bidding whatever they have to. And this goes back to the point I made before about because we're able to deliver once we're built, we know what our fuel costs are. We can generally deliver at a very good rate. So, right now natural gas prices are at a wholesale. I'll clear that up because none of us on the other side are seeing it as much as the wholesale market. But they're at an all-time low, and so they're actually very competitive right now. However, as with all forms of fuel, we do expect to see that go up at some point. So right now, it's tough competition, but there will be a point where, those gas prices will go back up and we will be almost guaranteed to be the first run at the lowest bid price into the market. So that's option number one. We can go at market price, that fluctuates, and we can do a business that way. But as with any business, we'd love a guaranteed price. So we will be marketing the power potentially to private buyers in the state, as well as depending on what comes out of these requirements in the new clean energy standard. If utilities have to purchase a certain percent of renewables, then we would probably go to bid with them for a 5, 10, 15, 20-year contract, whatever they're interested in, which, again, because of our consistent pricing, we can actually offer those utilities a hedge that is more useful than something where they might have volatile fuel fluctuation prices.
Chairman Gray, I said two, but can I have one more question?
Did you used to be a reporter? Because they're always good at that, too. Just one more.
Just as you're talking and things come to mind, and then you just try to get your mind around it. I mean, watching what's going on with Fitzpatrick Nuclear, and I was at a function in Syracuse talking to NYPA, Power Authority people, and and they're like, well, yeah, we don't want to own Fitzpatrick, we used to own it, I mean, they're talking about like it's a game, this is people's lives, this is a huge issue. So when it comes to the pilot, is the value of a payment in lieu of taxes a reduced cost to you, or is it the fact that you will have a fixed cost? Is it, taxes fluctuate, but a pilot doesn't. It's a 20-year commitment. Is the issue to have it fixed so you can sell that, so you can contain your costs, or is it so that you can reduce your costs?
It's both, all right? To have both, to have a lower cost and a fixed cost is important, and as we look at how these would be assessed, I think if we didn't have a pilot, if we go through that scenario, what we would see is a fluctuation on the back end where depreciation of these, once they're installed, would be great. Therefore, the municipalities, the taxing jurisdictions would see a decrease over time, whereas a pilot, while maybe more beneficial to us in the first few years, would probably be much more beneficial at the end of the pilot. So it's almost an evening out between the tax jurisdictions and us for how the benefit would work over time. That allows us to, as I said, compete on a level playing field, move forward with the project to get it established, and then have that steady flow that both helps us and helps the taxing jurisdictions.
Thank you.
You said over a course of time, the depreciation of the wind turbine would lower the tax assessment. Paul? Roxanne, would that happen? I'm sorry.
I love the heads up.
Yeah. Well, no, when he was talking about a pilot, he said you get a fixed amount of money.
What valuation if you're going to use an income approach to value earlier, you said that the production does increase over time. You do a contribute cost of depreciation. Depends on the valuation.
In other words, he's saying it's yet to be determined.
And that's, so because everything's worked under a pilot agreement before for the wind farms, we haven't seen this play out, so it's a bit of an unknown.
Mr. Drake and then Mr. McBride.
Yeah, one quick question about decommissioning. How long before these turbines are going to be useless and decommissioned?
So the time span that we're looking at now is 20 to 30 years. We have every incentive to keep these running at peak efficiency and running well for as long as possible. As I said, we put them in, there's all of our costs. We just pay to maintain them and generate power after that. So, the thing is, this industry is so new. The oldest wind farm in New York is in Madison, and those little Vestas machines are still spinning. They've been maintained, and they keep going. So, our goal, I think, what we would see from a turbine manufacturer is a 20-year guarantee, but our real thought is it's a 30-year lifespan and hopefully beyond that. And my hope would be that once these projects are established, with the way technology is moving, in 20 to 30 years, my hope is that we'll be able to replace the nacelle on the top with something that's vastly superior and keep running after that. But that'll be for the next guy to do, I'm hoping to.
Legislator McBride.
Thank you. I was just curious, do you think if you're up and going 2 years from now that you have the power sold completely to private investors?
I think, I can't say that for sure. Obviously, that's my hope. And generally, we will start to market that power well before construction. For us, this permitting process here is a new one, and we need to get a little bit further through that to have a clear line of sight on when we will be able to deliver. But once we have that, we're already talking with people now. Just a little bit of talk, but I expect in the next 6 months that will pick up.
Quick question. You mentioned Madison County, and they're at the end of their 20-year span, which would include their pilot. Do you know what they're doing at this point? Are they looking for an extension? Are they paying full taxation? You mentioned you have a useful life at 20 to 30 years. What's your intention to year 21?
Right. And actually, Neil, I think, is more familiar with this because he was just checking on the status of this. It's late breaking.
Sure. So from what I understand, the 47 legislation came into place and initially did not have an opt-out provision, be it 47 or an IDA alternative. And so I believe it's 47 because it's a 15-year life. So it didn't have an opt-out, and what they did there, they could have not paid anything, but they voluntarily agreed to pay community benefit agreements. So that's the revenue that the local jurisdictions had received for the last 15 years. I think it lapsed in 2015. But the legislation that made it exempt from taxes had a specific 15 years. So I don't think they had the flexibility or the discretion to extend that beyond that, because the enabling legislation says this is up to 15 years and that's it. So that lapsed, and I think it's publicly available what it's been assessed at, some depreciated value. I don't know how they arrived at the value, but it's less than the initial capital cost. And that, I think they needed to settle that by May 1st of this year. And so.
Settle on what, the assessment?
Well, I shouldn't say settle. I mean, it was up to the tax jurisdictions to, I'm sure they had discussions with the developer, but it's up to the tax jurisdictions and the assessor to say, this is what I think this property, it's a unique property, there are not a lot of comparables, and this is what we believe this should be assessed at. And I understand that determination was made, the deadline was May 1st, and so it's public record.
So it's going to some sort of full taxation then at this point, but less depreciation?
Well, yeah, it's going under normal tax treatment in so much as the assessor has made a determination of the assessment, and then the applicable tax rates would be applied to that assessment.
Okay. Mr. Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. I spoke to the treasurer, assistant treasurer, I should say, from Madison County this winter, and about Town of Fenner's project in particular. Yeah, when that lapsed, the Town of Fenner immediately lost $150,000 in revenue because all of a sudden there is no agreement. And that turbine project is debating heavily what their assessed value is. So I would be curious to know if there is a settlement done, what it has turned out as. Last I knew, things were not looking good for that township there. Not to mention, that project had a tower fall over in 2009 and a blade come off from it this year. So they have done some upgrades on some of the towers in 2010 to 12, but at this point, that project is not a stellar one to reference.
Sure. Well, no, there's two projects. There's the Fenner Wind Project, which is in Fenner, New York, and then there's the Madison Wind Project. And the Madison is a 7-turbine project, Vestas turbines, and that is the one that expired in 2015 and was required to be put on the regular tax rolls as of May of this year. I'm not sure about the schedule on the Fenner project.
We can do some research on that further, Mr. Peck. Any other questions? Hearing none. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate your attendance.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and questions.
Yes. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Turn this off so you're not...
Yeah, if you would, please. First courtesy. Much better. I'm blinded by it at this point now, so. Okay, we'll extend privilege of the floor to anybody that would like to stand up and address the board. And I would ask you as a courtesy to please keep it to 5 minutes or less. And just so I don't know who's intending to speak, but we are giving 30-second warnings.
Okay.
So before the end.
Hi. Thank you. Once again, an industrial wind project has banged on our door and demanded to be allowed to come in and change our beautiful area forever. Apex want pilots and special considerations. Wind developers in New York are focused on one thing right now, money. It is never anything other than that. Who will become president of the United States? How will the balance in the two houses of Congress shift? Answers to these questions are crucial to knowing if the scheduled diminishment of the federal tax credits for wind will get new life under a federal government that will be more or less friendly to big wind. And in New York, they're also watching to see if the billions the governor has promised to spur the growth of renewables will flow to them, how much and when, or if it will ever really materialize. That money does not exist right now. Keep in mind that during these early stages, the developers are not really burning any significant money, only the hourly fees of a few lawyers, some occasional road trips to the targeted towns to attend a meeting here and there, pulling well-used documents out of their filing cabinets to only slightly modify or resubmit. The Renewable Portfolio Standard, RPS, the Renewable Portfolio Standard, is the driving force behind wind power implementation in New York State. This 2004 political edit by the governor mandated a major change in the traditional sources of electrical power in New York State. When it was originally established, the New York State Public Service Commission was charged with reviewing the RPS to see if the benefits of renewable energy, like industrial wind, justified the costs, efforts exerted, and of course our tax dollars. So follow the money. Be overly cautious of promises from the wind developers. Industrial wind companies protect themselves and their companies by organizing themselves into LLCs. They know how to protect themselves and their assets and can walk away when the money train comes to a stop. They offer only a handful of full-time employee jobs once the construction is done, so please don't offer them Apex a pilot deal. They do not produce the long-term jobs that a pilot deserves. Wind projects create almost exclusively short-term, typically less than 6 months, construction jobs. Construction jobs are always welcome, but publicly funded construction jobs should build useful and necessary projects such as roads and bridges, not power facilities that just make a few individuals wealthy. Moreover, state mandates for purchase of high-priced wind energy will ultimately lead to significant job losses as manufacturers move their facilities to states with lower energy costs. Please do not offer any pilot agreement to Apex. I've got some websites at the bottom, and I did want to take note in his earliest, the one that was stated project overview, it actually said on there that the energy is going to be for 35,000 homes. Always read between the lines. He should have said if the wind was blowing 24 hours a day at maximum speed, we could possibly power 35,000 homes. So that slide really wasn't quite what I would have wanted to see. It should have been more honest about that. I was a little upset that he mentioned Fort Hood. Yes, they've got solar on site and wind off site. We see this over and over again on the internet now. These companies like IKEA, they want to be green, and so they'll go ahead and they'll put their wind farm up here, and we're going to suffer for it, but these companies can say that we use green energy to manufacture. And that's going to be at our expense. We clearly saw that their pilot is going to offer them all the benefit, and we're left holding the bag. It's our tax dollars that pilot money comes from. So I just please really think it over and go to the websites that are at the bottom of this. And I liked all your questions. It shows me you guys are all doing your homework, and I appreciate that, because we cannot accept this at face value. There's a lot more going on here. This isn't free money. It's our money. Thank you.
Ms. Grant, can you just state your name and address for the record, please? Thank you.
It's Cindy Grant, 12610 House Road, Clayton, New York.
Thank you very much.
And it's at the bottom of the letter.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good clerk is for. Okay. Anybody else like privilege of the floor? Address the board? Hearing none? We shall close it. Okay, reading minutes of last session. Anybody desire that task? Okay, hearing none, then they'll stand as presented. Presentations, petitions, notices, and communications.
We have 3 this evening to report. First, we are very supportive of a response from Senator Ritchie regarding the increase of the DMV fees being shared locally by New York State and pending legislation. Likewise, we also have on file now a letter from NISAC offering its support for the very same legislation. Finally, late today, we received the preliminary scoping statement submitted to New York State Public Service Commission by Apex Clean Energy for their proposed Blue Island project.
Okay, reports of standing committee.
We have a report of the Finance and Rules Committee reporting favorably on resolutions 152 and 156.
Thank you very much. Local laws, resolutions, and motions. Resolution number 142.
Payment of legislator expenses.
Discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Resolution 143, please.
Authorizing the vacating of judgment of foreclosure for owners of certain parcels of real property and discontinuance of foreclosure proceedings, and that list is on your desk.
Discussion? None? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Resolution 144, please.
Setting time and place for public hearing on the tentative 2016-2017 Jefferson Community College budget.
Discussion? Yes, Mr. Monticelli.
Is that the night that the college will be here to, do they, when there's a public hearing, do they do a presentation?
They will do the presentation. They could certainly be here for that. It's a public hearing we're holding that evening. At the upcoming Finance Committee meeting, that's when they'll do their presentation, at the very end of this month.
Thank you.
They usually attend both meetings. They attend both, the Finance and the full board. They speak at the Finance. Further? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. 145, please.
Appointing member of the Jefferson Community College Board of Trustees.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Adjusting and eliminating positions in the county treasurer's office.
Discussion? None. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Next is amending the 2016 county budget in relation to Highway Department Computer Software Fund.
Discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Next.
Authorizing agreement for development and submission of a community development block grant application to the New York State Office of Community Renewal and for the development and administration of grant program.
Discussion? None. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Next.
Calling on the state of New York to fully reimburse counties for mandated county costs for indigent defense services and public defender.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
I would make one note for the good of the order that an agreement has been reached to postpone the implementation date of October 1 of this year to April 1st of next year. It is hoped that in the intervening time, further discussions about the programming changes and the costs associated with it, and potentially some shared costs from New York State will be forthcoming in the intervening time. So there has been some success reported on this matter.
They are talking about a full phased-in,
correct,
phased-in takeover. I think I forgot the out year. It's over like a 7-year period or something. Correct.
Correct.
Okay. Did we have a vote?
Yes, we did.
We did. Thank you.
Resolution 150. Yes. Support of the National Oceanic and Atmosphere Administration for nomination of the Great Lake Ontario Marine Sanctuary.
Discussion? Yes, Mr. Maxim.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. I have a healthy mistrust of our federal government, I'd like to think. And I just don't, I don't see that the benefits of asking the federal government to create a new layer of bureaucracy when the enabling legislation at the federal level entitles them to control over all resources. I understand that it's what we're asking and what we're supporting is specifically for our submerged maritime heritage, but I don't know that the benefits have been proved to me yet. quite to ask the federal government to come in. So I will respectfully be voting against the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Maxim. I'm shocked. Mr. Jarrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and I think I think it's with good intention that this is being proposed. I don't have any problem with the intentions at all. What I'm nervous about is what happens in the federal government in the future in trying to control our shores and our recreation and our fisheries. And I know I've read it through. I understand how it's written, but my faith in Congress is along with Mr. Maxon, so I'll be voting against it as well.
Thank you, Mr. Jarrell. Comments are well taken. Mr. Ferris?
I will be the third person with these other two guys voting against this for pretty much the same reason.
Fair enough. Anybody else? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Nay. Oh, 4. Okay.
Next, approving appointments to the Thousand Island Regional Tourism Development Corporation.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Accepting donation on behalf of the Department of Fire and Emergency Management and amending the 2015 county budget.
Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Legislator Nabalani? Yes. Doldo? Yes. Monticelli? Yes. Drake? Yes. Johnson? Yes. Ferris? Yes. McBride? Yes. Heck? Yes. Maxon? Yes. Adsit? Yes. Jarrell? Yes. Reed? Yes. Gray?
Yes.
Motion carries.
153.
Adopting revised guidelines and administrative procedures in relation to the county's housing improvement program funded by New York State Community Development Block Grant Award.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. 154.
Authorizing agreement with the New York State Department of Education approved agency for the provision of special education services for preschool children with disabilities.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. 155, please.
Authorizing agreement and establishing rates for provision of related services in connection with the program for preschool children with disabilities.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. 156.
Amending the 2016 county budget in relation to community services.
Discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. 158, and the final.
Authorizing personal care aid service to be added to the Certified Home Health Agency Certificate of Need.
Clear the record up. That was 157. And not the final. Discussion? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. 158, and the final.
Authorizing agreement in connection with lead poisoning prevention program.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Carried. That's it for the resolutions. Anybody else have anything to come before the committee? Yes, Mr. Maxim.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Just regarding resolutions 154 and 155, I just would like to say that I appreciate that the state allows us to engage in the charade where we set rates and approve them now, only to have them altered in the future. So I hope that we can come to some resolution with the state about them retroactively changing these rates someday down the line. But until then, I don't want to harm the children who require these services because they deserve the services that they need.
So it'd be fair to say that you have a distrust for the state as well as the federal?
I do.
Okay.
I have a list.
Are we still on the radar as being okay, or let us know if we get on that radar. So, thank you.
Just as a matter of decorum, I left my tinfoil hat in the car. I thought the flash would reflect poorly.
Oh, Mr. Maxim, your comments are always appreciated. Anybody else? Mr. Monticelli.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to say that I'm pleased to have had the opportunity to attend the NISAC Finance School in Syracuse, and it was very interesting. I mean, the financial condition analysis presentation was done by the Executive Deputy Commissioner. He's the fellow that we had the opportunity to meet when we were talking about the preschool funding in Albany, so it was kind of nice to get reacquainted, and he did a nice job with that. Talked about policies and procedures, the county, the fence really that we put around the tax funds is done by our policies, and it was very interesting the way it was put together so that it was for the layperson. There was the GASB presentation was definitely over my head. It was for fiscal people, and I only stayed out of a matter of politeness. The one on foreclosures, they postponed or canceled, actually. That's the one I was interested in. And then there was stuff on restructuring municipal funding. There's grants available and retirement information. It was really a useful 2 days, useful piece of my time, and I'm glad to have had the opportunity, so I thank you.
Sorry,
Thank
Legislator
you. Thank
Beck.
you, Mr. Gray. Just wanted to be confirmed that I was recognized.
Pardon?
Just wanted to make sure I was being recognized. And just wanted to remind everybody that June is Dairy Month, and as such, my wife made cookies once again, and naturally, I brought milk from home with me. So I do have cups if anybody wishes to have a share of the real stuff, not the store-bought stuff. Yeah. But I did want to elaborate on a few things, trends happening within the industry for certain. Some people have made mention that the price collapse that we're enduring right now, and it very much is a collapse. Just some quick figures. In I'll start in March of 2014. I was grossing $26 a hundredweight. March of 15, it was $18. March of this year, $15.89 a hundredweight. And for April, it went from 26 to 18 to 15. And that is not the low point. The next month or two is still going to be lower than that per hundredweight. And this is a trough that is very badly hunkered down for the next 12 to 18 months. So the dairy industry is in a serious downtrend right now. And in consideration of that, it's very disheartening to see that this industry is being used as a political football nearly daily by either politicians or environmental groups, labor groups, which have now formed a challenge against the state's constitution, which our lovely governor will not even defend, to force unionization of farm workers within New York State. And then you go so far as fear-mongers who try to confuse consumers who are 2 and 3 generations separated from an agricultural background and heritage. They don't understand that cows need to be milked twice a day. GMOs are a new technology to enable more food to be produced more efficiently and cheaply than when it used to be. And the newest, something my wife showed me on Facebook today, that those who think that antibiotics are in your milk, if you get antibiotics into a milk tank and it makes it to a milk plant, that farmer is liable for that entire load. They are financially liable. So there is no incentive and there is no reason and there is no way in hell that you are going to get antibiotics into the milk supply. There's just no way. It will not happen. It does not happen. I've had close calls on my farm, and when that happens, you take a sample, you get to a place that can test it, and you make sure, because dumping your tank is a whole lot cheaper than dumping your neighbor's tank. And beyond that, it's in consideration of where things are going, and coming into our budget season, I alluded to this last year when we were talking. We talk about in terms of a $100,000 home when we talk about what our tax rate and how it can affect somebody. But when you talk about a farm, it's $300,000 plus, and that's on a small size of my scale, to a larger, a Ron Robbins, a Porterdale, Birch Creek Farms, you're talking about millions of dollars in assessed value on a farmstead. And when you talk in those terms, and where we're boxed in with expenditures and things from the state, every penny that we can save, every margin that we can trim to be able to maintain a tax rate, as much as I despise the 2%, coming into this year and looking at what's coming ahead, there's no way that this industry can really fully afford any increases in taxes at any level within this county and in this state. This is scary. You know, quite frankly, this is scary, what's coming down. And beyond that, there continues to be the increasing age of farmers within our industry. You know, I'm 32, heading for 33 next week, and you see people I'm still the baby on the board too, Chair. So you still see people going and complaining about the $15 minimum wage and what kind of increases those are going to have an effect on, and just where am I expected to come up with money to pay that sort of wage when I don't even earn that myself? So it begets the question of why is there no young people engaged in agriculture, and it's for the simple fact that it's very hard, it's very demanding, and you have to have a love and a passion for it. You can't just be looking for the paycheck, because it won't come until you sell the farm, and that's a hard thing to consider doing. But on a lighter note, otherwise, though, I hope that you all did receive an email from Jefferson County Farm Bureau about a couple of farm tours, open houses that are being done this month at North Harbor Dairy, next week, June 15th from 6 to 8, and Porter Dale's on June 29th from 7 to 9. This is a joint venture of Soil and Water and Farm Bureau and some other agencies in the county to try to educate our local elected officials on current trends in agriculture, because as you remember of last year with manure storage structures and the hoopla that has created and misunderstandings and misconceptions, the industry is trying to be forthright in demonstrating that we're doing what is right and proper, but also to be able to educate people. Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator Peck. Your advocacy for the farming and the agricultural community is certainly appreciated, and your perspective and your passion is admired. So thank you. Job well done for what you do for us. Well, we're going to put your wife under contract for a monthly basis for the cookies. So, Mr. Legislator Nablonik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just hot off the press late this afternoon, some good news from Senator Schumer's office there. We received a $527,000 plus grant for a new snow broom at the airport. This is part of, with the increased employments at the airport over the years, we've gone from $150,000 in federal aid up to $1 million. So this is, would have been a very difficult piece of equipment to purchase beforehand. So that certainly is good news, and the previous equipment reached its life, so it's something to share.
Thank you, Legislator Nablonik. We all reach a useful life over time. Just don't tell Schumer that. I don't want to be replaced right away. So, anybody else? Attorney, do you want a PSA on the auction? Microphone.
County tax auction is this Saturday. Starts at 9 o'clock. Registration begins at 8 a.m. Encourage everybody to make it known to the public. Like as much turnout as possible.
Mr. Ferris.
I did have a question from someone who will be losing his property when he said, how long do I have to get out of there? And I said, I didn't know.
Well, that really depends on who buys the property and what arrangements they can make with each other.
We have no control of that once we sell it. So, out of our jurisdiction. He's just enforcing. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, motion to adjourn. Mr. Legislator Mongelli, Legislator Ferris, all in favor?
Take the high road.
Hi, how are you? Yeah, everybody needs to.